On this Saturday night, a premier in the hot seat as Northern Ontario burns.
Do not go to your campsites. Do not go back to your homes.
Doug Ford's plea to evacuees to steer clear of raging wildfires as some vow to fight the flames themselves. Escalation abroad. Iran hits American allies in the Middle East as Ukraine deals a deadly blow by drone to Russia. Election officials threatened with jail time.
The polls showed it, everyone showed it. They rigged the election.
Donald Trump doubles down on old claims with a new twist. Plus, an out-of-this-world experience. The Canadian kids entering a whole new orbit.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Sarah McDonald.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Firefighters are battling hundreds of wildfires from coast to coast to coast tonight, and a growing number of them are classified as out of control. Late this afternoon, the Canadian Armed Forces announced they'll support the evacuation of Fort Hope, Ontario, over a rapidly advancing wildfire. Authorities in that province are calling this year's fire season unprecedented. Here's another angle of those ferocious wildfires raging in the province's northwest. This was taken earlier this week. 7 new fires ignited today, raising the total number of active fires in that province to nearly 200. Premier Doug Ford was in Thunder Bay today, where evacuees are seeking refuge and answers from the government. Vasilios Bellos reports.
After harsh criticism from fire evacuees in northwestern Ontario, Premier Doug Ford made a visit to Thunder Bay, where most of those impacted have been forced to stay, vowing the province is there to support.
Meals, drinking water, pet accommodations, hygiene kits, and access to medical services as well. We're also working across government and with our federal partners and the Canadian Armed Forces to establish transportation and accommodation.
The Premier called out opposition parties for their comments on the fire response, saying this issue shouldn't be politicized. Ford also with a message to United States politicians, including President Trump, for their criticism and threats towards Canada.
Why don't you get rid of the softwood lumber tariffs? Because 33% of the lumber that you use in your building, guess what? It comes from Canada. You want us to clear the forest? Well, open up the gates.
The hotel where the majority of evacuees are staying had to direct donations to other places in Thunder Bay after receiving an influx of essentials. But leadership of White Sand First Nations say the same support hasn't come from government, with many of their members returning themselves to the community to protect infrastructure.
We will be banging on doors, you know. We need answers. This is our home.
Whiteshell is expected to be reimbursed funds used to support evacuees, but only for on-reserve members, despite supporting a number of others from impacted communities, including nearby Armstrong.
We need to be as one, and they need to recognize us as one and cover all the costs as one.
With other communities now awaiting evacuation orders, Thunder Bay Mayor Ken Boshkov says their resources are already stretched thin.
They're at overcapacity, but the teams are doing their best, and no one's complaining. Everybody's just doing their job.
As Thunder Bay runs out of space for evacuees, the next move might be to open up Fort William Gardens. It's the city's local hockey arena and could house some cots. That, as officials believe, more people will be coming to the city as the fires continue to rage on. Sarah?
Vasilios Bellos in Thunder Bay. Thanks, Vasilios. Rain and stormy weather is helping to ease a thick blanket of wildfire smoke in Toronto. Environment Canada is predicting air levels should drop from very high risk to low risk by tomorrow morning. There has also been rain today in East Rutherford, New Jersey, where the World Cup final will be held tomorrow. There had been concern that all the smoke there could force a delay in play. On the West Coast, dozens of new fires have ignited in BC over the last 24 hours after thousands of lightning strikes across the province. The 59 Creek wildfire ignited northwest of Kamloops and grew overnight. More than 100 properties in the area are under an evacuation order, and dozens more could soon follow suit. And some welcome news in the Northwest Territories. Fort Simpson residents can now return home as an evacuation order was rescinded today. A wildfire in the region that started just over 3 weeks ago has burned more than 50,000 hectares. One day after U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to raise tariffs over Canadian wildfire smoke, the U.S. ambassador to Canada had more positive things to say about another trade issue. Pete Hoekstra spoke exclusively with Global News. Mackenzie joins us now. And Mac, what did he have to say specifically on the Gordie Howe Bridge dispute?
Well, the Americans certainly are mad about Canadian wildfire smoke, but the U.S. ambassador to Canada is pleased. He got what he wanted, Sarah, to open the Gordie Howe Bridge.
What I can tell you is that in terms of the agreement, it appears that there is no distance between us and the Canadian government. We have a deal. We understand what's in it. We believe that the Canadians have agreed to what's in it.
Hoekstra wouldn't say on the record what the deal is, but he had previously told Global News the Americans wanted more money sooner. And two Canadian government sources tell Global News that will happen. Canada will get 100% of the revenue from the new Gordie Howe Bridge, and that'll be used to pay for things like snow removal and maintenance costs, but importantly, not debt payments on the bridge that Canada paid $6.4 billion for. The money left over will be split 50-50 with the Americans for 15 years. What our sources have told us is not how the Prime Minister had characterized the deal. He had said Canada would get all the money they paid to build the bridge for before the U.S. got any cash, which is how the original 2012 bridge deal had worked. Carney's office has refused to release the text of the agreement to clarify the terms. Now, the bridge is set to open on July 27th, and Hoekstra said there'll be a ribbon-cutting ceremony on the 24th. But Canada has been in this position before. The bridge was supposed to open in June. Invitations to a ribbon-cutting ceremony had been sent out, but that was abruptly canceled, in part, Hoekstra says, because it wasn't sanctioned by the American side.
And I can tell you that I found out about that agreement. Howard Lutnick found out about that agreement. The president found out about that agreement. We all found out the same way. We found out about it in the media. That was not an agreement that the three of us were aware of and signed off on.
If this agreement is good enough to open the bridge, we'll have to see on the 27th, Sarah. But this is the first time that there has been any deal that Mark Carney has cut with the U.S. in his 16 months in office, and he gave up money promised to Canada for it to happen. As for the really big deal, the free trade talks, Hoekstra says there is still no plan in place for negotiations with Canada, despite Mexico and the U.S. already having had multiple formal meetings about renegotiating CUSMA.
Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa. Thanks, Mac. More escalation in the Middle East today as Iran launched another wave of strikes on U.S. allies, killing at least 2 American soldiers based in Jordan. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard also says it struck a support center and a radar facility between 2 U.S. military sites in Kuwait. But the Kuwaiti government accuses Iran of targeting civilian infrastructure, including an oil facility and a water plant. There are reports of several injuries. The attacks are in retaliation for U.S. strikes on Iranian military facilities, with Iran also accusing America of destroying civilian infrastructure and killing dozens of people. In Russia, a Ukrainian drone strike has destroyed several warehouses near Moscow, killing at least 8 people and injuring dozens more. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is touting it as a blow to Russia's military supply chain, warning there will be similar attacks to come. But as Vincent McAviney reports, Zelensky is also facing political headwinds on the home front.
This was the moment one of Wildberry's warehouses, Russia's equivalent of Amazon, collapsed after being struck by Ukrainian drones overnight. Several of its warehouses near Moscow and Tambov were hit, as well as an oil depot, filling the skies with thick black smoke. Moscow's mayor said more than 370 drones were sent towards the capital region overnight. Both Russia and Ukraine have been targeting each other's economic infrastructure for months, particularly energy sites. But this is the first time Ukraine has hit logistics depots of this kind. On social media, President Zelensky justified their targeting, claiming the facilities had been used to supply sanctioned drone components and navigation equipment to the Russian military. Ukraine has also struck tankers and cargo ships in the Sea of Azov, the Black Sea and near Russian-annexed Crimea, using new long-range drone technology that has extended its reach deep into enemy territory. Combined with recent attacks on petrol facilities, the disruption to fuel supplies has become so acute that President Putin has had to publicly acknowledge shortages for citizens. But the sacking of the mastermind behind Ukraine's drone might, 35-year-old Mikhailo Fedorov as defense minister, has sparked protests across Ukraine. The popular innovator has support from soldiers, but has fallen out with military commander-in-chief Oleksandr Syrsky after blocking purchases of artillery ammunition in favor of drones. Syrsky has conflicts not only with the defense minister, but also with commanders. If he stays, we will simply be ineffective. We could simply lose this war. Syrsky is in fact part of the old system, while Fedorov is young, intelligent and a man of conscience. Fedorov has also voiced political ambitions, leading some to accuse President Zelensky of sidelining a potential rival. Undoubtedly, his focus on drones, which has shifted the balance in Ukraine's favour this year, was getting results. Vincent McAviney, Global News, London.
U.S. state election officials are being threatened with possible jail time if they don't comply with a new set of security measures from the Trump administration. Candice Cole reports on how Donald Trump is upping the ante on election fraud claims and how it could impact the upcoming midterms.
I was supposed to not be here right now. I was supposed to be president for 8 years. The polls showed it, everyone showed it. They rigged the election.
With midterm elections just a few months away, U.S. President Donald Trump is once again resurrecting unfounded claims of election fraud surrounding the results of the 2020 presidential election that resulted in Joe Biden taking office. This week, during his presidential address on election security, Trump appealed to Congress to pass his failed legislation to impose stricter parameters around voting in the U.S.
Addressing this crisis of election security demands that Congress must pass the Save America Act.
Following Trump's remarks, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Markwayne Mullin laid out new election security protocols he says each state will have to take, including securing voter machines, reviewing voter registration, and verifying voter citizenship.
Once we gave them the information they need to secure their elections, and they chose not to, then those individuals can also be held accountable by fines, by penalties, and even, depending on how far it goes, prison time.
Mullin says so far his department has identified 250,000 non-citizens registered to vote across California, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Nevada. But while the Trump administration attempts to sell these measures to the American public as preventing voter fraud, some state election officials are sounding alarm bells.
What the president has been doing is fundamentally dangerous for American democracy. Make no mistake, he is in an open power grab and actively working to destabilize the 26 elections.
Voting rights advocacy groups argue the Save America Act, which has failed to gain full Republican support in the Senate, would disenfranchise millions of voters, particularly younger voters and voters of color who may not have immediate access to documents proving their citizenship, like a passport or birth certificate, to participate in elections. Candice Cole, Global News, Washington.
A group of First Nations are looking into nuclear power. Coming up, why a group of Indigenous leaders say Canadian governments should be considering it too. A delegation of BC First Nations has traveled to Ontario to explore a clean power generating option, nuclear energy. As Aaron MacArthur reports, the Indigenous leaders say other jurisdictions around the world are moving forward with similar technology.
It's the dawn of a new nuclear age in Canada.
The BWRX 300 is the first North American grid-scale small modular reactor.
Ontario moving ahead with plans to build up to 4 small modular reactors. A group of First Nations leaders from BC just returning from studying that technology, asking whether it could one day have a place here.
You know, what is involved? What are the dangers? What are the risks? What kind of a footprint does it take? You know, what are the costs?
BC expecting a surge in electricity demand over the next 2 decades. And while the province is betting on wind and solar, First Nations say they're exploring every option to meet future needs.
I'm not for or against, but I like to educate myself, and so does my community. And maybe probably the province of BC also should look into potential possibilities.
For now, nuclear isn't part of the province's plans. The government says recent power calls attracted thousands of megawatts of wind and solar proposals, much of it Indigenous-led. There are also questions about whether SMRs make economic sense in BC. Ontario's first reactor is still years away from completion, and experts say building an industry from scratch in Western Canada would take even longer and cost even more.
Wind, solar, and batteries are the lowest cost electricity we've ever seen from any technology, and so they're basically outcompeting almost everything, whether it's nuclear or otherwise.
First Nation leaders insist this wasn't about endorsing nuclear power. They say the trip was about understanding a technology that could become an option, while renewables remain the immediate focus. Aaron MacArthur, Global News.
A lot of people like it one way, a lot of people like it the other way.
Ahead, changing times, how the United States could soon be saying so long to daylight savings. The U.S. is one step closer to making daylight saving time permanent after a bill passed in the House this week. If it becomes law, Americans would stop changing their clocks twice a year. BC and Alberta have already announced similar plans. Taria Isri takes a look at what permanent daylight savings time down south could mean for Canada.
Is the sun about to set on time change in the United States?
One time is good enough. Once you're used to one time, then next thing you know, next 6 months you got to change again.
The U.S. House of Representatives has passed the Sunshine Protection Act.
308, the nays are 117. The bill is passed.
A major step towards making daylight saving time, the time between March and November, permanent.
Please standardize this and give us more light and opportunity.
It still has to go through the Senate. U.S. President Donald Trump calls the legislation a win.
It's something I can do, but a lot of people like it one way, a lot of people like it the other way.
But the U.S. has tried this before during the 1970s energy crisis.
In a time when oil reserves are running out.
And it only lasted 10 months. Americans largely hated the pitch black mornings.
One more time.
British Columbia and Alberta no longer spring forward and fall back, joining Saskatchewan and Yukon in ditching the practice. There could be more pressure on other Canadian provinces to do the same if the U.S. stops switching the clocks.
If there's a desire to have a uniform continental economy and see Canada as just part of that continent, it suddenly looks strange if certain provinces have these weird times.
Sleep experts say the time change can harm health, but also argue permanent standard time is more in line with internal body clocks. Others are a bit tired of the perennial debate altogether.
Time means nothing to retired people.
Taria Isri, Global News, Toronto.
Soccer superstar Lionel Messi has addressed the viral photos of him bathing Spanish superstar Lamine Yamal when he was a baby.
No, bueno, Lamine es un grandísimo jugador.
Lamine is a great player, he says. It's crazy, but that's life. Messi was photographed bathing Yamal for a UNICEF campaign in 2007. He says the 19-year-old now has, quote, a great opportunity to achieve something historic, which we will try our best to ensure doesn't happen this time. Argentina plays Spain for the World Cup title tomorrow. Next, prepare for blast-off. Meet the kids getting a cosmic experience in Quebec. Well, many kids dream of being an astronaut when they grow up, but a program in Montreal is aiming to make that dream seem not so out of this world. Today, kids were given the chance to be an astronaut for the day to encourage them to pursue a career in science.
Yo, guys, I'm inside the capsule.
It was only virtual reality.
Is that you up there?
But for these kids, it was like they were really on the International Space Station, orbiting the Earth.
It was very realistic and it gave me motion sickness.
They were at a space camp for 9 to 15-year-olds at Concordia University called Astronauts for a Day, to help foster interest in the field.
They get to learn more about the Canadarm, CSA's workshop, so really giving students the opportunity to get exposed to what it's even like being an astronaut.
And to show them, even at this age, what the possibilities are in Canada. It was organized by Zenith Pathways Foundation, a Canadian space fellowship that was created in 2021 to support students studying in aerospace.
We found that it's incredibly difficult to be able to access the information and the opportunities that are available. So our goal is to connect students with Canadian space internships and also space executives.
The Astronaut for a Day camp, the second annual one, is an extension of that vision. Founding members of the fellowship, the first one of its kind in Canada, now work in the industry.
I work on robotic arm called Canadarm2, and our goal is we provide support to real-time robotic operations of the Canadarm2 aboard the International Space Station.
Event organizers are now more optimistic for the future of the industry. A recent Canadian Space Agency report says in 2024, the country's space sector injected nearly $4 billion in the Canadian economy, a 6% jump since the previous year, and a 15% increase since 2019.
It's a convergence of many factors. So, of course, recently there's been a lot of interest in defense and the desire for Canada to be more capable on its own to produce its products in aerospace and defense.
That, as well as pride and imagination, say those in the industry, means the future is looking up for kids like these. Phil Carpenter, Global News, Montreal.
It certainly is. And that's Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Sarah McDonald. Tonight's Your Canada is the annual Pride Parade in Halifax, celebrating the city's LGBTQ2+ community. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you right back here tomorrow. Have a great night.